Thanks, Joe, for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Joe. I'm a junior here at Stanford, and I am the co-president of ASES, which is the premier global entrepreneurship club here at Stanford. I'm originally from Australia, studied computer science, care a lot about education, so have worked at the lab for a bit, and spent the summer kind of building my own edtech company. But yeah, no, I've been part of ASES for almost 3 years now, and this is the one where I lead it. So it's exciting. It's a lot of work, but super excited to chat more about it. Yeah.
Yeah, excited to chat with you about Stanford ASES today. How did you first hear about the organization?
Yeah, so I think ASES we run like a flagship program at the start of freshman year, and it's called Bootcamp. It's kind of our main 40-person cohort, relatively competitive, and one of those things that like every single freshman is like, like I have to be a part of this. So at the start, it kind of felt like it's just like another one of those programs. And then I really enjoyed it. I met a lot of my best friends through it, and it just fundamentally just felt like a really cool community to be part of, which was how I was introduced to the first place. And then ASES runs a bunch of different other programs as well, like Breakthrough, VC3. A lot of them kind of span, different parts of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I ended up kind of running one of those in my sophomore year. And then post sophomore year, I was like, hey, I think I should actually, might be actually worth it.
Cool. And before we dive into the questions for this interview, I wanted to just kind of share some background information about the org.
Right.
So it's student-led org at Stanford. It was created in 1988, and there are now over 800 alumni, including people like Gary Tan. Is there any other like background information that you think is important for the audience to know before we dive into the programming and other things about this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I think the main kind of unique aspect of ASES is that it is a global entrepreneurship club. So we have chapters around the world. We have chapters in Australia, we have chapters in Manila, we have chapters in Shenzhen, Zhejiang, like a lot of different places around the world. And the big emphasis here is global entrepreneurship. One of our main programs is that we fly people from around the world, 30 delegates into Stanford. I think that's kind of like how we differentiate ourselves, or kind of what we care about, beyond just being an entrepreneurship club. But yeah, other than that, like, happy to take it away.
Gotcha. And are all the chapters like connected to schools, or?
Yeah, I think, so most of them are connected to universities. Some of them aren't. Some of them are more kind of just like connected to like local institutions who work with schools. But yeah, Stanford is the headquarters, and we kind of like try and maintain these relationships around the world.
Great. And you kind of hinted at some of your programming. We would love if you give an overview of all the programs that you run. So you guys run Bootcamp, Launchpad, VC3, Breakthrough.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, so we've kind of like grown a significant amount in the last couple of years. As you said, it's like a 40-year institution. Like, it's been around for a while, and I think it started out as like just Summit. So Summit is like our main flagship. It used to be this huge thing where, I mean, it still is, but it's a week-long immersion into Stanford and Silicon Valley, where we essentially have 30 delegates from around the world that come in, and we give them a week-long experience. Over time, I think our on-campus presence has also increased. And so we now have programs like Bootcamp, where we take students through a 12-week program with regards to how to validate an idea, how to go from 0 to 1, how do you be scrappy, build, create this like very like entrepreneurial mindset, beyond just sitting in a lecture hall and just watching. It's very hands-on. We also have VC3, which is a very popular one, where we invite 15 VCs from the Valley and curate around 30 or so startups at Stanford. And what we do is we do a rotating kind of one-on-one pitch style competition, where each VC kind of has 5 minutes with each kind of team, and it's very educational. So they kind of give advice and on their pitch and their idea, and also like an opportunity to invest. So VC3, you have Bootcamp, we have Breakthrough, which is a VC education program. So I see it kind of as a world building program, where we split the teams up into climate, healthcare, education, and we match each team with a mentor that is hopefully an expert in that field. And then over the span of 10 weeks, the kids kind of think about different theses and different hypotheses about where that industry is going and how they can make tangible bets in the future. So Quentin, the ex-CTO of Dropbox, is one of the mentors. We had, some from Reach Capital, like that did the education sector. So pretty cool program, I think. One of my favorite. And then we also have Launchpad, which we go to high schools, and we for schools that don't have a traditional entrepreneurship or business program, we try and run a weekend workshop with these students. And yeah, I think those are the main ones. We also have, a really strong alumni network and foundation that our team supports. Other than that, yeah, that's kind of the main. Let me think. Am I missing anything?
I think you cover them all.
Yeah, cover most of it. Yeah, those are the main teams in most programs, I'd say. And I'd say like the coolest part is, this year we're really trying to revive. Like what's happened is I think, ASES used to be super, super international, and then COVID hit. And so a lot of the relationships abroad have been, wavering and up and down. And I think that like this year, a lot of our intention has been, can we try and truly revive those chapters beyond just, Asia, but also around the world. So we used to be an Asia Pacific club only, but now it's much more broad than that. So we're trying to build relationships in Europe and try to expand our presence there.
Yeah. That's awesome. And earlier on this call, you mentioned like these programs are just really competitive to get into. I saw you guys have like an application process on your website. Can you talk about that application process and what you're looking for when selecting students to these programs?
Yeah, I think the main competitiveness is mostly just, I think Bootcamp and Breakthrough are a little competitive. I will say too, like if you don't get into say Bootcamp or one of these, all the other teams are, you can join as an organizing team at any point. Like it's completely, no admission, like you'll be part of the teams. I think the Bootcamp one is unfortunately just a little bit competitive because only 30 get it. And there is an element of, we pride ourselves a lot on community, where I think out of a lot of the clubs here at Stanford, I think that ASES has a decent amount of buy-in as well. And just like people who are willing to kind of give to this family that is beyond just work. I think with Bootcamp, it's also a pretty strenuous kind of procedure where it's, an initial screen, we have group interviews, we have individual interviews, and then we kind of chat a lot about it. I think my biggest piece of advice there is we want to see like how much you care about problems in this world. As a global entrepreneurship society, like the big thesis here is, I think it is so easy to get sucked into the problems of the Bay, where you look around us in this bubble. We're building tech for tech, AI for AI, and it's very easy to kind of lose sight of like genuine, real problems that exist around the world. And I think that like part of our mission is to bring together people who care about actual genuine problems beyond just what they see around them. And I think if you're able to kind of demonstrate this, care about anything truly, but just something that is meaningful to you, and demonstrate an action to a bias towards action, I think that is like the main thing that we're looking for. Something that will help you kind of thrive during your bootcamp experience.
Yeah, makes sense. I really like that. And what do you see as like the biggest opportunities to improve Stanford ASES in terms of how you support student entrepreneurship? You mentioned one of the big initiatives is reviving international relationships. What are some of the other things that you guys are working on?
Yeah. So I think so. One aspect is the international part. Just to touch on that a little bit, I think the dream is that for anyone that kind of interacts with ASES at Stanford or abroad, the goal is that you feel as if you're a part of this greater community that is beyond just your local institution. Like if you join ASES Manila, you're a part of this grand kind of vision of this is ASES. Like if you come to the States, you will be supported and you will be able to kind of get in touch with us. So a lot of that has been investing in a platform where different chapters will have kind of their own little portals and kind of having some sort of tech solution behind that. On the other side, I think one thing that ASES is also trying to do, like and improve on, is creating a space for technically minded founders to thrive as well. This is something that like we are thinking about different ways to do this in some sense, but I think with entrepreneurship and whatnot, like I think there is so much to do with the business aspect when it comes to like pitching and storytelling. But there's also a lot about like being scrappy and like validating fast and like creating very small MVPs and building up the skill set that allows you to do that. And I think that like one thing that we're trying to make Bootcamp more leaning towards is more buildy. So it's less kind of a structured entrepreneurship like course, but more importantly, I think it's more of a, hey, can we like give you the right people to mentor you and kind of take your idea and really, really understand, does this idea actually hold up in the real world? And then give you the tools to actually test and validate those ideas, whether it be, knowing how to mock up something in Figma, or whether it be knowing how to build a really, really quick React app to like share to your friends. That is getting kind of the main shift and improvement, I think, that we're kind of moving towards. Yeah.
Cool. And now I wanted to sort of transition to questions to help students who want to join the Stanford ASES internal team. When do you recruit for internal team members?
Yeah, so we actually recruit at the start of every single quarter. Bootcamp in particular is the fall, so that's past. We start like week 1, week 2, week 3. And then in terms of like joining an organizing team, so if you want to help organize Summit, if you want to help organize VC3, all of those clubs are open to join year long actually. And I think most of that actually starts start of the quarter. So if you want to join any of those, like feel free to reach out. And then our next big one is, if you want to join VC3, we start recruiting midwinter. If you're a startup that wants to get advice. And then if you want to join Breakthrough, it's also kind of midwinter because these start spring. Yeah.
Cool. And what are you looking for when selecting students to organize these initiatives? Is it similar to when you're selecting participants for programs, or are you guys looking for different things?
So organizing team, we actually don't have a selection criteria. So organizing, if you want to join a team, we will put you in that team to help out. So it's a very like inclusive process. I think that is in some sense like the compensation for having a very exclusive program, where it's like, like to be like, we want everyone to be part of ASES. And I think that like that is kind of the traditional route. But yeah, so like nothing too particular. Honestly though, like if you really, really care about one of the streams and you truly want to make a difference in that field, I think like that is what is going to help you thrive.
Yeah. And then can you give me a general sense of just like how big this org is? Like how many internal team members, and then like how many students are supporting?
Totally. Yeah. So it's internally we have like up to 30-ish leadership members. And we kind of operate like every team is a little startup. So we have 2 co-directors per program and they run it entirely. So we as execs have, we help out when we can, but fundamentally it's on them to kind of drive it and push it forward. So it's very like, it's like we have like 7 little startups like within our team. And then in terms of like our how big it is, we have, I think, up to 700 graduate and undergraduate members, or I think 800 now. I think it's a little bit more. But yeah, it's a pretty good split between, we're mostly an undergraduate institution, but I think some of our programs like Breakthrough is actually more catered towards, graduate students. So if there are any graduate students watching this, I think our split last year was like 40% grad students, 60% undergrads. And a lot of them were, MBA students, PhD students, a lot of PhD students in the deep tech team. So I think Breakthrough has almost increased the diversity of our kind of interactions with ASES, like beyond just undergrads, but also kind of to different parts of the school, which has been really, really cool.
Sweet. And last 2 questions. So I think Stanford is really like the university known for entrepreneurship and startups. In your own words, because Stanford has like so many options of like ways you can get involved with entrepreneurship, what do you think makes Stanford ASES just like the best place to learn entrepreneurship on campus?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of places, as you said. There's FAF, there's BASES, there's ASES, there's a lot of different communities. There are friend groups that you can be part of. I think ASES is fundamentally, I think it comes down to the people. I think the buy-in and I think the care of the team that I'm a part of is truly special. And I think, there is there is something like I think unique about not just being a club that is there for work, but a club that is a little bit more. And I think that like I don't think that entrepreneurship is a very structured thing. Like you can't really learn it in a classroom, and I don't think it should be learned in a classroom. And I think that what's hard is that like over time, I think entrepreneurship is becoming increasingly institutionalized and increasingly more of a pipeline and more of a machine. And I think that ASES and BASES and all of these clubs are a product of that environment, right? It is institutionalizing and creating a pipeline out of, what was once very hacky and scrappy and very, very loose. And I think that like, despite all the structure that exists within ASES, I think that there is a shift right now culturally to make it a bit more of a loose environment where, Bootcamp is more scrappy. And even from like a leadership point of view, like I think us as human beings, like there are there have been people who are dropping out of ACES to go into YC. There are people who are building on the side. There are, Story and I started a company over time. So I think culturally there's a shift as well. And I think that like just to be around individuals who care beyond just classes and what is typically considered required for a student, I think is somewhat of a unique experience. And I think the global thing is also really, really cool. So if you want the opportunity to, meet people from around the world, I think that is why I think entrepreneurship is so important, because you should genuinely care about a problem. And I think that like a lot of what ASES supports is that care.
Cool. I just thought of another additional question that I want to throw in there.
Sure.
So it seems like a lot of your programs are directed towards people who want to build like tech startups, want to raise like VC funding. Do you see this as a good club or a good organization for people who want to start like small businesses or are interested in like other forms of entrepreneurship? Or do you still think you're just very focused on tech startups and that route right now?
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right. There is a focus on kind of scalable VC backed, especially due to the nature of like a lot of our mentors are VCs. A lot of them are VC backed founders. So naturally, the advice is more so catered towards those like super ambitious ideas. But I will say like we actually are in potential chats with a couple like partner organizations that also are trying to support that middle outcome. Like you're not scaling to the moon, but you don't want to just like not do anything, but you want to create like a sustainable kind of business that is kind of helping us. I think it's still skewed towards either end. But I will say like I think we're trying to potentially help, because I think Story and I, like my co-founder and I, we're in that position right now where we've built this education business and we have 30 classrooms around the world using it. But we're sophomores and we have we're juniors, but we have, in essence, 2 full years left of college. And we're not building it as a venture backable business. I also don't think you can when it's going within the system. We're trying to find that middle ground of like, hey, can we hire people? Can we, support this thing beyond ourselves? And I think that like, there are kind of avenues, and I think ASES is trying to put kind of programs in place to kind of help that.
Makes sense. And is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to know for someone considering Stanford ASES, whether they want to be a participant or an internal team member?
Yeah, I think I would say like come with an open mind. I think ASES is one of those institutions where I think that like we're very open in the sense where like it's very non-traditional in the sense where I think for many people at Stanford, it is their first introduction to entrepreneurship. So not many of our students are actually like hardcore like startups, like this is my life. Like a lot of them are actually just like, hey, I'm here at Stanford. I come from a policy background. I come from an economics background. I want to learn more about what it means to be entrepreneurial and take an idea and move it into the real world. And this is the place for that. So it's very open-minded. There's, don't feel like you have to be, planning to start a company in order to join this club. Like it's very much, hey, like explore and learn. We also believe a lot in not necessarily, working at a startup or a small company to be entrepreneurial. I think a lot of it is you can be entrepreneurial in whatever discipline you choose to be. So if you want to be a researcher or a pharmaceutical, like you can be entrepreneurial. It's very much a spirit and a mindset and something that we can cultivate beyond just kind of working at a small company with 5 people, right? So I think, that's the biggest thing. Like it's we're very open to a lot of different backgrounds. And I think a lot of our students also come from those backgrounds as well.
Awesome. Great way to finish it. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for taking the time, Kieran. Really, really appreciate it.